100 men are eating a dead man's kingdom alive. They've moved into his palace. They're slaughtering his cattle, draining his cellars, and pressuring his wife to choose one of them as her new husband. They're so certain the king is never coming back that they've stopped pretending to be guests. But the king isn't dead. He's on a rock in the middle of the sea, 1,000 miles from home. And tonight a goddess decides that 20 years of waiting ends now. This is the Odyssey. Homer's first song, the Iliad, was about the war. This one is about the harder thing that comes after it, getting home, and finding out whether home is still yours when you finally arrive. Tell me, O muse, of that ingenious hero, not the strongest man in Greece, the cleverest. His name is Odysseus, and before he speaks a single word, one story tells you exactly who he is. I'm Arthur. This is mythical manner. Let's begin. Years before Troy, the warlords of Greece came to Ithaca to collect on an oath. Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, had been stolen away to Troy. And every powerful man in Greece had once sworn the same vow. If anyone ever took her, they would all sail together to bring her back. Now the oath had come due. Odysseus didn't want to go. He had a wife he loved, Penelope, a newborn son, a small kingdom that fit in his 2 hands. A foreign war could swallow years he'd never get back. So when the recruiter's ship touched the Ithacan sand, they found the king of Ithaca down on the beach, ploughing it. He'd yoked an ox and a donkey together, 2 animals that pull at different speeds, so the plough lurched and staggered across the wet sand in crooked, drunken lines. And he wasn't sowing seed. He was reaching into a sack and flinging fistfuls of salt into the surf, row after row, planting a crop in the sea, eyes rolled to the clouds, mouth working at gods only he could hear. It's a genuinely brilliant piece of theatre. Sailors are superstitious people, and a cursed, raving king is a king nobody wants aboard their ship. The message wrote itself. This one's mind is gone, leave him. And it almost worked, and everyone went still, to see what a madman would do to a child. Odysseus swerved, a madman wouldn't have. In one reflex, a father refusing to crush his own son, the whole act collapsed. The cleverest man in Greece had been beaten by his own trick. And now he had no way out. He was going to war. He fought at Troy for 10 years, and in the end it was Odysseus who cracked it. Not with a sword, but with a story. A giant horse of mountain pine, hollow-bellied, left standing on the sand as the Greek fleet pretended to give up and sail home. The Trojans hauled the trophy through their own gates. That night, while the city slept off its celebration, the soldiers folded inside the horse's belly climbed down, opened the gates from within, and let the war back in. By dawn, Troy was ash. Hold on to that image. A man who can win anything with his mind. Because the next 10 years are going to take from him the one thing cunning can't buy back. Time. The home he left is changing while he's gone, and he doesn't know it yet. Of the 12 ships that sailed with him from Troy, not one will reach Ithaca. But that story comes later, in his own voice. For now, leave Odysseus on the water, and turn back to the island that's been waiting for him for 20 years. Ithaca is a small, rocky island off the west coast of Greece. Goats, olive terraces, one good harbour, a palace on the hill. It is not rich, but it is a kingdom, and for 20 years it has had no king. For the first 10 years, that was the war. Everyone understood war. The wives waited. The islands held their breath. Then the war ended, and the other men came home, some in triumph, some in pieces, but they came. Ship after ship returned to harbour after harbour across Greece. One never did. No body, no wreck, no word. just an empty horizon where a ship should have been, year after year, until the islands stopped expecting it and started assuming the obvious. Odysseus drowned on the way back, like so many others. The king was dead, the throne was empty. And an empty throne, in a world like this one, is a kind of open wound. It started quietly. One young nobleman at the gate with a gift and a polite question. Is the queen ready to remarry yet? Reasonable enough. Then 2, then a dozen, then more than 100, 108, sons of the best families on Ithaca and the islands around it, all camped in the dead king's hall, all courting his wife. But this was never really about love. They were eating him alive, and doing it slowly, deliberately. Picture a single day in that hall. By mid-morning they've drifted in, 108 young noblemen, and claimed the best seats as if they were born to them. Out in the yard, his cattle and fat hogs and goats are slaughtered by the dozen and turned on spits over his own fires, the smell of roasting meat hanging over the palace every single day. Inside, they crack open wine he sealed away years before he sailed, dust still on the jars. They throw scraps to the dogs across floors his servants have to clean. They grab at the serving girls. And when they're bored, they bully his son for sport. A king's wealth in this world isn't coins in a vault, it's herds, stores, land, and standing. And they are burning through all of it, on purpose, year after year, daring anyone in that house to make them stop. No one can. That's the suffocating heart of it. There is not one person left on Ithaca with the power to throw 100 armed young noblemen out of a palace. Not a grieving queen, not a half-grown boy. The army that could have done it has been gone to Troy for 20 years and never came back. And the one man whose name alone would have scattered them is presumed dead at the bottom of the sea. Which brings us to the boy. His name is Telemachus, and he was an infant, that same baby in the sand, when his father sailed for Troy. He has no memory of Odysseus, not one. He grew up on stories. Your father was the cleverest man in Greece. Your father ended the greatest war in the world. And then he'd look up from the story and see a hall full of strangers eating his inheritance, and 100 men who treated him like a child in his own home. That is a brutal thing to grow up inside. To carry a great name and have no power to back it. To be told, year after year, that the father you've waited your whole life to meet is almost certainly never coming. So you'd better stop hoping and accept it. And then there's his mother, Penelope. She is trapped in an impossible position. She cannot say yes. Choosing a suitor means accepting Odysseus is dead and handing his kingdom to one of the men devouring it. But she cannot say no either. 100 noblemen do not take rejection quietly, and there's no army to protect her if they stop asking and start taking. So she does the only thing left to a clever woman with no power. She stalls. And she does it with one of the great tricks in all of literature. She tells the suitors she'll choose a new husband. But first, she has a sacred duty. She must weave a burial shroud for Odysseus's aging father. So the old man won't lie in death without one. No one can argue with that. It's holy. So she sets up a great loom in the hall and begins to weave in full view every single day. And every night, alone, once the hall finally falls quiet, she lifts a single lamp, sits back down at that same loom, and by its light pulls the whole day's work back out, thread by thread, until the shroud is exactly as unfinished as it was that morning. Think about what that costs her. Every day she weaves a beautiful thing in full view. Every night she destroys it in secret. Every morning she sits down and begins the lie again. For 3 years. 3 years of public progress and private unraveling, of telling 100 men soon and then quietly picking soon apart in the dark. Its patience turned into a weapon, and it works, until it doesn't. Until one of her own maids, loyal to a suitor's bed instead of her queen, sees what's happening at night and tells them. Now the trick is dead. The suitors know. They've cornered Penelope. Finish it and choose. The stalling is almost out of road. And into that house, a powerless boy, a cornered queen, 100 men who can smell the end coming. The gods are finally about to move. Because someone has been watching all of this. And she has decided that this is the year it ends. High above the mortal world on Olympus, the gods are at council. And one of them has been waiting a long time for this exact moment. Athena, grey-eyed daughter of Zeus, goddess of wisdom and war and clever hands. Through all 10 years of fighting at Troy, Odysseus was her man, the mortal whose mind worked the way a god's mind works. She has watched him stranded year after year and said nothing, because she's been waiting for the one day she could win the argument. That day is now, because one god is missing from the table. Poseidon, god of the sea, is far away at the edge of the world, feasting. And Poseidon is the whole problem, the reason Odysseus has spent a decade fighting the water instead of crossing it. We'll come to why. For now, what matters is this. The one god who wants Odysseus to suffer has left the room. So Athena makes her move. She can't simply fly down and free him herself. That's not how this works. She can't openly overrule another god's grudge. What she can do is win the argument in council while that god is away. So she picks her moment, and there's real anger under the wisdom when she speaks. There is a good man rotting on an island, she says. Odysseus, who never once failed to honor you gods, who gave everything at Troy. And for what? He's a prisoner. The nymph Calypso keeps him on her island year after year because she loves him and won't let him go. He sits on her shore every single day and weeps toward a home he cannot reach. Meanwhile, his son is hunted in his own house, his wife is under siege, his kingdom is devoured, and not one of you lifts a finger. Why be just at all, father, if this is how you repay the just? It's a sharp question, and she aims it like a blade. Zeus doesn't flinch. How could I forget Odysseus, he says, the wisest of all mortal men? This was never the king of the gods' doing, it's Poseidon's grudge, personal and bitter. Here's the short version of a story Odysseus will tell in full later. On his way home, he and his men were trapped in the cave of a Cyclops, a one-eyed giant, a son of Poseidon, who began eating the crew alive. Odysseus escaped the only way he could. He blinded the giant, and the blinded Cyclops raised his arms to the sea and begged his father for vengeance. Let this man lose everything, lose every companion, and come home late, broken and alone. Poseidon heard, and the god of the sea has been collecting on that curse ever since. But Poseidon is one god, and he's outvoted. He cannot stand against all of us, Zeus says. With him away, let's bring Odysseus home. And just like that, after 10 years, the machinery of heaven turns. 2 moves at once. First, Hermes, the messenger, is sent flying to Calypso's island with an order she cannot refuse. Let him go. And second, this is the part that matters for our story, Athena goes down to Ithaca herself. Not as a goddess. She wraps herself in the shape of an old family friend, a sea captain named Mentes, and walks up to the palace gate of a powerless boy who has spent his whole life waiting for someone to tell him what to do. She is about to tell him. The disguised goddess reaches the threshold, and watch what Telemachus does. The hall behind him is chaos, 100 men shouting for wine. And the first thing the boy does is cross to the door, take the stranger's spear with his own hands, and seat him in the place of honor, away from the noise, so a guest won't have to eat among animals. That's not nothing. In this world, how you treat a stranger at your door, xenia, guest friendship, is sacred, the deepest test of character there is. The suitors fail it every hour they're in the house. The boy, with no power and nothing to prove, passes it without thinking. He's his father's son. He just doesn't know it yet. They talk, apart from the crowd. And the old captain says the things no one has said to Telemachus in 20 years. Your father is not dead. He's alive, held against his will somewhere out on the sea. And a man like that finds his way home. And you are not a child anymore. Look around you. This is your house. Why are you letting them take it? And here the boy says something quietly devastating. People tell me I'm Odysseus's son, he answers. But how would I really know? No one ever truly knows his own father. I never even met mine. 20 years of doubt in a single sentence. A boy who isn't sure the great name he carries was ever really his to begin with. The old captain doesn't let him hide there. Then comes the plan, and it's the engine of this whole episode. Tomorrow, call an assembly. The whole island in the open. Stand up and name what these men are doing out loud in front of everyone. Then get a ship. Sail to the mainland, to Pylos and to Sparta, and find the 2 old kings who fought beside your father at Troy, Nestor and Menelaus. Ask them to their faces what became of Odysseus. If he's dead, come home, bury him properly, and deal with the suitors. If he's alive, then hold on a little longer. Either way, stop waiting, go find out. And then Mentes stands, walks to the door, and is gone. Where the old captain stood, an eagle lifts off the threshold and beats up into the evening sky. Telemachus stands frozen, staring at the empty doorway, and understands. That was no sea captain, that was a god. A god came to his house, called him by name, and told him to act. Something hardens in the boy in that moment, you can see it. That night, he barely sleeps. The next morning, for the first time in 20 years, Ithaca holds an assembly. The free men of the island gather. Old men on staffs, fishermen, farmers, and the wary suitors too. Telemachus takes the speaker's staff, the same staff that passed through his father's hands, and he stands up in front of everyone. His voice shakes. Then it steadies, and he names it all. The 100 men in his house, the herds slaughtered, the wealth burning, the wrong of it, without softening a word. The suitors don't even pretend to be ashamed. Their leader rises, Antinous, the cruelest of them, handsome and cold-eyed, and he doesn't apologize. He attacks. He turns the whole thing around and lays it at Penelope's feet. We're not the problem here, boy. Your mother is. And then, in front of the entire island, he exposes her. He tells them about the shroud, the great loom, 3 years of weaving by day and quietly unravelling it by night, the trick that kept 100 men dangling, and he spins it as proof that she's been the liar all along. So here's our offer, he says, flat and final. Send your mother back to her father's house to be married off, and we'll go. Refuse, and we stay in this hall, eating your inheritance down to the walls, until she chooses. Every day you stall, there's less of it left. It's a threat dressed up as a grievance, and the whole square hears it for exactly what it is. Then his partner works the other angle. Eurymachus, the smooth one, all warmth and false reassurance. Nobody wishes you any harm, young prince. Be reasonable. Talk sense into your mother, and this can all be easy. Poison, with a smile. And the crowd? The free men of Ithaca shift on their feet and study the dirt. Most of them are decent people. Not one of them will be the first to move against 100 armed nobles for the sake of a dead king's son. You can feel the whole assembly sliding away from Telemachus while he's still standing in front of it. One man tries. An old prophet shoves forward, pointing up, because right then, directly over the assembly, 2 eagles have come tearing out of the sky, locked together, ripping at each other with their talons. He reads it cold. This is a sign. Odysseus is nearer than any of you think, and there is blood coming to this house. The suitors throw their heads back and laugh. Old men and their birds, sit down, grandfather. And Telemachus, who came to this assembly hoping the island would help him, sees clearly now that no one is coming to save him. So he ends it. He throws the speaker's staff down onto the stones hard, and the crack of it silences the whole square. The asking is over. Now he acts. That night, the goddess comes back, wearing a different face this time, an older counselor named Mentor, and she makes the impossible part happen. Quietly, while the suitors drink, she gathers a ship and 20 loyal men who still remember Odysseus. By the time the suitors notice the boy is gone, he's already at sea. A west wind fills the sail, a little too perfectly, the way winds do when a god is pushing the boat. And by dawn, the green hills of Pylos rise out of the sea. Pylos belongs to Nestor, the oldest of the kings who fought at Troy, so old he's lived through 3 generations of men. Telemachus arrives to find the entire beach mid-ceremony. Thousands of people, rows of bulls being sacrificed, the ancient king at the center of it all. And the boy freezes at the ship's rail. How do you just walk up to a living legend and ask about your father? Mentor pushes him forward. The gods will put the right words in your mouth, just open it. And they do. Watch the pattern repeat. Nestor's people don't interrogate the strangers. They feed them, seat them, honor them, and only then ask who they are. Guest friendship done right. Every time we see it done right, remember the 100 men back in Ithaca doing it wrong. When the boy finally says his father's name, Odysseus, the old king's whole face changes. The cleverest man who ever stood at my shoulder, Nestor says. At Troy, when the Greeks were ready to quit, it was Odysseus who talked them back from despair. Only his mind could have dreamed up the horse. For 10 years, in every hard council, the 2 of them were never on opposite sides. That's how rare it was. But then his face darkens. Because after Troy fell, the victors fell apart. The gods were angry. Terrible things had been done in the sack of the city, and the Greek captains quarreled and scattered to the winds. Nestor sailed straight home and got there safe. Odysseus turned back. And that was the last time Nestor ever saw him. I don't know if he's alive, the old king admits, but if any man could survive the sea, it's him. Don't give up hope. And then Nestor tells a story that hangs over this whole poem like a held breath. Because while Odysseus was lost at sea, another of the great kings did make it home, Agamemnon, the supreme commander, the man who led all of Greece to Troy. He sailed back in triumph, the beacon fires were lit, a feast was laid, a hero's welcome waiting. And at that feast, in his own hall, his own wife and the lover she had taken while he was away cut him down. The conqueror of Troy survived 10 years of war and died on his first night home, ambushed at his own table by the people who were supposed to love him. The most dangerous place Agamemnon ever set foot was his own front door. Sit with that, because it's the engine humming under everything that follows. A homecoming is not automatically a happy ending. A house can sour while a man is gone. A welcome can be a knife. That is the exact shape of the danger sitting in Ithaca right now. A hall full of men, a pressured wife, a throne up for grabs. And it's why the boy has to grow up fast. It's also why, when Odysseus finally does come home, he will not walk through his own front gate, trusting a soul. Nestor can't tell him what he came to learn, so he sends him onward, to the one man who got home last and saw the most, Menelaus, king of Sparta. He gives Telemachus a chariot and sends his own son along for the road, and they ride inland into the mountains towards Sparta. Sparta is everything Ithaca is not: broad, wealthy, built to impress. And as the chariot rolls in, Telemachus feels something sharp under the wonder. My father should have had this. Instead, strangers are eating it back home. They arrive in the middle of a celebration, a double wedding, the hall blazing with gold and music. At the center sits Menelaus, the king, and beside him, Helen. That Helen. The most beautiful woman in the world. The face that launched 1,000 ships. The woman a 10-year war was fought over. Home now, back at her husband's side, as if none of it happened. Telemachus can't stop looking at her. Neither could a generation of dead men. Menelaus, like Nestor, does it right. Baths, fresh clothes, food, then questions. And as he studies the young stranger's face, something stops him. The jaw, the eyes. He sees Odysseus in the boy before Telemachus says a word. And when the talk turns to the friend Menelaus lost, the young man's composure finally cracks. 20 years of not crying, right at the surface, eyes bright, lips pressed. And here Helen does a small, strange, telling thing. She slips a drug into the wine, a medicine out of Egypt, nepenthe, that lifts grief just long enough to let people speak of painful things without breaking. It's a kindness. It's also a quiet gut punch. Another man's wife, another mother, easing the boy's sorrow. Because his own mother isn't here to do it. And pause on who's pouring that cup. This is Helen, the woman whose face launched 1,000 ships, over whom this entire 10-year war was fought, who watched Troy burn from its walls and came home anyway. Now she drifts through a peaceful Spartan hall, gracious and serene, mixing medicine for a grieving stranger as though those bodies were never piled at the gates. The most consequential woman in the world, perfectly, eerily calm. Homer never quite explains her. He just lets her sit there and unsettle you. Then Menelaus tells his story, and it's the one we've been waiting for. His own road home took years, and the worst of it was a dead calm. His fleet got pinned against a little island off the coast of Egypt, the wind simply gone, the sea like glass, his men slowly starving on the sand with no way to move. Sailors dread that stillness more than any storm. The only way out, a sea goddess told him, was to capture her own father, Proteus, the old man of the sea. A primordial god who knows everything, the future, the fates of distant men, the road home. The catch is that Proteus answers to no one, and the instant you seize him, he becomes something else in your hands to make you let go. So Menelaus set an ambush. Every day at noon, Proteus came up out of the water to sleep among his seals on the beach. So Menelaus and 3 of his men disguised themselves as seals, wrapped in fresh, reeking sealskins, the stench almost unbearable, and lay down among the herd to wait. And when the old god stretched out to sleep, they sprang. And then they just had to hold on. That's the entire test. Proteus became a roaring lion in their arms, and they held. A hissing serpent, a leopard, a charging boar. He turned to running water and poured straight through their grip, and they held. He became a great tree, and then a column of living fire, a man's bare arms wrapped around the flame, and somehow, still, they held. Until the exhausted god ran out of shapes, gave up, and agreed to answer. Proteus told him the fates of the other Greeks. Some bitter, Agamemnon murdered, Ajax drowned at sea. And then Menelaus asked about one more man, about Odysseus, alive, stranded on a far island, held by a nymph who won't release him. No ship, no crew, weeping on the shore toward a home he can't reach, but alive. And there it is, the thing Telemachus crossed the sea to learn. His father is alive. Not safe, not free, maybe years from home, but alive. You can see the boy hold it in, the way you brace for a blow and realize it didn't land. Understand what this means to him. He has spent his entire life, 20 years, inside one unanswerable question. Is my father dead or alive? Everyone around him decided dead long ago and kept telling him to decide it too. He sailed across the sea on nothing but a stranger's word and his own stubborn hope. And now, a king with no reason to lie has looked him in the eye and said, alive. It doesn't make anything easy. His father is still trapped, still a world away, and 100 men are still in the hall. But for the first time in his life, the hope isn't childish. It's true. That changes a person. As they leave, Helen reads one last omen out of the sky, an eagle with a goose snatched in its talons, and she speaks it like a prophecy. So will Odysseus come home and fall upon the men in his house. When he arrives, blood will flow. She has no idea how right she is. Now cut back to Ithaca, because while Telemachus was finding his courage, the suitors found out he was gone, and it changes everything for them. They'd written the boy off as a child, but a child doesn't quietly commission a ship and a crew and slip off to consult the great kings of Greece. That's something his father would do. Antinous understands the threat immediately. The boy we dismissed is not the man who's coming back. If Telemachus returns with allies, with proof, with a reputation, he becomes dangerous. So Antinous proposes the obvious, ugly solution. Kill him before he gets home. Put a fast ship and 20 armed men in the narrow straits the boy has to sail through, and make sure Telemachus never reaches the harbour. No body, no trial, no king's son, just another young man lost at sea, like his father before him. And here's the coldest part. How easily they agree. Hands go up around the hall. There is no shortage of volunteers for murder among these so-called suitors. Whatever thin pretense they had of courting a queen is gone now. They're simply a gang of armed young men who've decided a boy is in their way. A fast ship is quietly provisioned, and it slips out of the harbour at dusk to go and lie in wait. Word of the plot reaches Penelope, and her composure, the thing she's held together for 20 years, finally shatters. Not the careful, strategic queen now. Just a mother who has just learned that men with swords are waiting in the dark water for her only son. She didn't even know he'd left. He made the decision alone, without asking her, and underneath the terror there's a flash of something else. Pride. He decided on his own, and he was right to. Her boy is becoming a man, and it might get him killed. She cries herself out, and the goddess, quietly off to the side, the way Athena works, sends her a merciful, dreamless sleep. The gods are moving now on every front, including for the boy. At Sparta, Athena comes to Telemachus in the night, not as mentees, not as mentor, but close to her true self, glowing at the edge of his sleep, with a warning and an order. There are men waiting to kill you in the straits. Don't take the obvious route home. Slip past them by the outer way, land quietly, and go first to a man you can trust. He wakes before dawn and doesn't waste a minute. The boy who used to stand on the shore waiting is now a young man who moves, hitching the chariot in the dark, riding for the coast, taking the long, hard route around the islands to come home a different way than his killers expect. He left a boy. He's coming back with answers, and with enemies, and with a spine. And that's where Homer leaves the first movement of the Odyssey. Scholars have a name for these opening 4 books: the Telemachy, the story of Telemachus. And you might have noticed something strange about it. The Odyssey is the story of Odysseus, and we've spent the whole first stretch barely seeing him. That's not an accident. That's the master at work. Because before Homer lets his hero take the stage, he shows you exactly what's at stake. We've seen the house being eaten alive. We've seen the queen at the very end of her tricks. We've watched a powerless boy become someone who could fight for it all. We know this home with our own eyes now, so that when Odysseus finally fights to get back to it, we feel the full weight of what he's fighting for. And the man himself? 2 different kings on 2 different shores have now told us the same thing. He's alive. Out on the water, weeping toward home, held by a goddess, but alive. The hero is loaded into the chamber, and Hermes is already streaking across the sky to set him free. So next time, we leave Ithaca behind. We go to the island at the edge of the world, to the goddess who's kept him for 7 years, and the raft he builds to escape her. We sail into the worst storm Poseidon can throw, and for the first time in this whole story, Odysseus stands up and tells it in his own voice. The waiting is over. The hero is coming. I'm Arthur. This is Mythical Manor. If you want to be here when he finally takes the stage,